Bandwidth for Changelog is provided by Fastly. Learn more at fastly.com. We move fast and fix things here at Changelog because of Rollbar. Check them out at rollbar.com. And we're hosted on Linode Cloud servers. Head to linode.com/changelog. This episode is brought to you by DigitalOcean. Guess what? DigitalOcean recently added MySQL and Redis to their list of managed databases. Their full managed databases lineup now includes the 3 most popular databases out there for developers: Postgres, MySQL, and Redis. It'll eliminate the complexity involved in managing, scaling, and securing your database infrastructure, and instead get back to focusing on building value for your users. Learn more and get started for free with a $50 credit at do.co/changelog. Again, do.co/changelog. What's up, everyone? Welcome back. This is the Changelog, a podcast featuring the hackers, the leaders, and the innovators of software development. I'm Adam Stacoviak, editor-in-chief here at Changelog. On today's show, Jared and I are talking with Jeff Meyerson, host of Software Engineering Daily, and also the founder of FindCollabs, a place to find collaborators for open source software. We talk with Jeff about living in San Francisco, his thoughts on podcasting and where the medium is heading, getting through large-scale market changes, and we also talk, of course, at length about his new project, FindCollabs, the difficulty of reliably finding people to collaborate with, the importance of reputation in rating systems, and his invite to the Changelog audience to come and check out what he's doing and find some collaborators. Jeff, what I find interesting about your past is you've lived a lot of cool places. Austin, not far from me. I live in Houston. Chicago, which I have family in Chicago, and Chi-Town's an amazing place. And then finally, the epicenter of all things, right? San Francisco. So
Seattle as well for a little bit, right?
It's been the same mostly because I actually, wherever I am, I'm mostly just on the internet.
Yeah.
You know, it's really a matter of how's the weather and how steep is the grade of the hills that I'm running when I go for a run outside. But other than that, it's mostly just I'm on the internet.
What about in terms of a podcast for those who are recognizing? Is that Jeff Meyerson's voice? Yes, it is. Your friend from Software Engineering Daily. Probably recognize that voice. The clashing of 2 podcasts that are very similar and often listed right next to each other in people's favorite podcast lists, which we love to see our name there. We love to see your name there as well, Jeff. From a podcaster's perspective, though, like now you're in the Valley. You weren't always there. And that's very different from us. And one thing we were talking about when we met at Open Core Summit and we're hanging out was how you have the opportunity for a lot more face-to-face conversations than we do being remote. So I'm just curious if your location now being in the Valley, living in San Francisco, if that's changed your perspective or changed your opportunities in terms of podcasting or even in terms of, you know, the tech industry.
Yeah, the reason I came here was to be closer to the things that were really emergent and at the tip of the spear. As you guys know, the world is changing in a way where now there's interesting stuff going on everywhere, and technology is infused with whatever local set of concerns there are. So like, you know, in Houston, for example, Adam, I'm sure you could go out and find oil companies and banking industries who are going through a quote-unquote a digital transformation.
Sure.
And there's plenty of interesting software stuff going on there. And you could ask them to point you to their new vendors, and they would have probably a wide suite of new vendors and new technologies and new design patterns that they're exploring right now because there's so much going on in software. But what I like about San Francisco is there's kind of a filter for people who come here where it's sort of hard to make it here. Like, it's expensive. It's hard to kind of, you know, elbow your way into the right conversations and figure out kind of how things work here. But there is so much opportunity, and the overall ethos of San Francisco is so welcoming. And there's such a diverse lineage of arts and culture and technology and all these different things that, you know, for somebody like me who is really addicted to just stimulus of all kinds, I haven't found any place that comes close to it.
So another trend when you talk about opportunities elsewhere, or not necessarily, you know, the ethos of having to be in the Valley, which was very much a press upon many entrepreneurs and technologists, like you should be in this area. We're seeing opportunity in lots of different places now. Another thing that we're seeing, which as a podcaster I've been tracking, is the move away from in-office colleagues to remote work. And we just had a call with Bob Martin where we were talking about the pros and cons of that. A team that's co-located, he says, will always be more productive together than a team that is distributed. That being said, we have huge personal and life advantages of remote work. Kind of a side thing that's happening there, and something I think about, I'm curious as a podcaster, Jeff, if you think about this, is the thing that remote changes for podcasters is it removes the drive time commute, which is where a lot of our audience is listening to this. In fact, if you're out there listening, you're probably in a car, you're probably on public transit, you're probably on your way to or from work. Curious if you're thinking about that, or if you're concerned that this awesome thing where people can work remote is not so awesome for us who kind of have that commute as a time for them to listen to our shows.
Bob Martin is Uncle Bob, right?
Yeah, correct.
Right. So I think Uncle Bob is hilarious, and I think he's got a lot of software wisdom, but I got to say I can't disagree more with him on this one. And I think it makes sense that he believes that, because that has been an antiquated axiom for a while, but, for a long time it was just an axiom. And the reality is, like, our current structure of how software is built is not going to last. This model of gigantic corporations where most people go in and do extremely boring work all day and hate their lives, despite the fact that they have the skills that they could use to build world-changing technologies from their bedroom, that's just like a market inefficiency that will erode over time. And one thing that makes that glaringly obvious is just, you guys know how pleasurable it is to work from home and live the life of a software podcaster. It is unbelievably enjoyable. Mm-hmm. I wake up pinching myself every day, and my sense is that you guys have an element of that as well. It's like all you could ever want, basically. And yet we're not even like, I'm wearing my Indie Hackers t-shirt right now. We're not even close to the top of the totem pole of the Indie Hackers in terms of like how much money we're making or the kind of freedom that we truly have, because we're on a schedule. Like, we got to crank, These Indie Hackers, they just make a business and it just like they go to sleep and it makes money. And most people just don't know about this movement. Uncle Bob is just wrong here.
And yet you're drawn in the valley.
Absolutely, because there are new things that are extremely hard to build and that make sense to co-locate for. If you're building out Databricks and you're trying to like go to market with a world-changing data engineering technology, if you're building something as novel and strange and controversial as Airbnb or Facebook, you basically need to treat your company like a military force. And, you simply cannot get the level of necessary bandwidth from digital communication, and you cannot get the level of kind of understanding of the discipline of your workforce or the creativity of your workforce through Slack channels. All due respect to GitLab.
Yeah, I mean, you need face-to-face for a reason. It's called humanity because it's actually humanity. It requires humans. And I think as part of that, human communication has evolved in the last 100 years because of the internet. Not even the last 100 years, last 25 or so years, really. And so communication has always been in the human race face-to-face. For a while there we had television, and we still do have
for a while.
Sorry. But it's becoming less and less important, though. It's sort of like abstracted to something else now.
Video.
Then you have this advent of the telephone, maybe even, say, a walkie-talkie. But the point is that human communication thrives, in my opinion, by face-to-face. But I'm on your side, Jeff, where I'm advocating, and I did on that show with Uncle Bob, that there's trade-offs, right? Like, if you're a distributed team, it's not going to be the same as a co-located team. And there's trade-offs on how you build that team. And as you mentioned, you don't build a Facebook or a Google or a Airbnb with a co-located team in everything. You've got to have, sort of this militaristic attitude and formation around the ranks so that the humans can thrive together. It's so weird to talk about humans as a human. It's weird. Anyways.
So I guess I'm not quite following you. Are you saying he's right or wrong then, Uncle Bob? Because you're saying we have to be militaristic and face-to-face, but you're saying that he's wrong about remote work. So maybe, Jeff, what you're saying is like in the short term it's true, but over the long run, as we get more used to this kind of communication, we see the benefits of remote work and working from home, that the trade-offs will be no longer worth it, and everybody will be working wherever they want to be because our tooling, our skills, our communication skills will all have advanced so far that there's no advantage, or that the law of diminishing returns on the co-location will no longer be worth it.
Maybe. We don't know. I think you're broadly correct.
It's my favorite kind.
No, but like we don't really know what kinds of technology companies are going to be built
right.
in 5 years. And like that is one of the things I like about Silicon Valley is like whatever the weirdest technology style is, it's probably occurring in Silicon Valley. So like drones on the blockchain, right? Like just to,
it's like buzzword bingo, yeah.
Some buzzword bingo that actually like it could make sense eventually. Like maybe we need a decentralized drone network because like only the blockchain will enable the, necessary crowdsourced security protocols that will secure our drone force because the security problems are so difficult. Like maybe, I don't know, whatever, like that problem sounds difficult enough that you would want a co-located workforce who can really hash through problems quickly and effectively. But who knows, like maybe communication will get good enough, Zoom VR or something.
So let's assume a world where the benefits of remote are massive and it's become the way that developers live their lives and work. When are they going to have time to listen to Software Engineering Daily?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just operate Software Engineering Daily assuming that whatever we're going through with podcasting is a total bubble. So like I'm basically ready for the business to die. I assume it will.
Okay, so you're living in a world where you assume at some point it's going to go away.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it seems almost in the near future to you. So, you know what I mean? Like, you're not banking on Software Engineering Daily as your long-term forever thing. You're sort of assuming that at some point, so most businesses at some point, either fail, dissolve. Yeah, there's some sort of change. Like, it's going to be a case. But you're saying the actual podcasting business bubble will change.
I mean, maybe it's just like this is the innovator's dilemma, right? Like you don't want to put yourself, as Jeff Bezos says, in a situation where you have to throw a Hail Mary. You don't want to get backed into a corner where your podcast literally cannot make enough money that you can, pay for your healthcare or something. Like you just don't want to get into that situation. And like, I'm kind of exaggerating. I'm like in saying that, it's going to die. Cause like probably I could get on the Patreon dole if all else failed. But I mean, I'd rather just assume I'm going to die because I don't know if you guys know, but like I used to play poker and basically the bottom dropped out of the poker market. Like I think most people who are in the technology industry have not lived through a significant crash. I mean, maybe like, the crypto people who, were like day trading coins. Sorry to curse, but you can bleep that.
You said Bitcoins. It's okay.
I definitely did not say Bitcoins.
Oh, no, you can't.
But yeah, I mean, so I've been through a market crash and I was not prepared for it the first time. Now I'm ready.
So the answer to Jared's question on what do you do with listeners if the remote workforce is remote and not co-located and there's no commute, your response is you have a plan B.
Go do something else.
Yeah.
I think that's a good, you can't turn back time. I mean, things change.
Right. If there's no market, there's no market.
Yeah, exactly.
I think my response would be, I think that they're still listening. You just have to augment and change how you deliver the message because clearly there's an interest. Otherwise, they wouldn't have listened in the first place. Now they just have less time. So the interest may remain. It's just how do you now fit in a new time slot or less time? So we see a lot of people listening to our show, mowing the lawn, taking a run, hanging out with a sleeping child on their belly or whatever, hanging out or whatever. Like there's different places where they change, where they listen. So my answer is I think the commute will eventually go away completely, but I don't think we will lose our listenership. It'll just change how we reach that listenership.
And I would say to that, good riddance, because I would much rather have all these people get rid of that commute than like maintain our podcast.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's like a much bigger win for humanity. But these are the funny and interesting things that we think about. Like, wow, how could remote work modify what we do? And I think, you fit into where you can and you provide value where you can. And the fact is that mediums do change. I mean, look at the world 15 years ago before YouTube existed. It's massively different now. And that's just like the way it is. So
I think specifically to us too, as technologist podcasters, like people who speak about software, technology, etc., you have to ask yourself, how big of an audience do you need to make a living? You know, in your case, Jeff, you are solo. In Jared and I's case, we're partners. So we both have, we're two people and families. So our burden is probably slightly heavier, assuming, than yours might be. So, to answer that question, it might be, well, you might need to double your audience. You might need to only have X. Who knows what that X is? But at the same time, you also have this sort of like loyalty of 1,000. So if you have 1,000 loyal followers, that's enough to some degree, potentially, to really kill it. But you have to ask yourself, how much do you really need? Right. How many listeners do you really need to thrive doing what we do in particular?
Well, it's probably worth turning the camera outward, or stop gazing at our navels so much and gaze at Jeff's navel. I don't know. Is that a weird thing to say? Let's talk, because the thing about Software Engineering Daily, which I learned recently, Jeff, is like, you put out 5 shows a week. It's very impressive. You're cranking them out. You work very hard. You've been doing that at a sustained pace for a very long time. And it's a high quality show. And yet it doesn't seem like that's your passion. You have these other ideas. You have other projects. Today, we're going to talk about FindCollabs, which is something entirely different, maybe somewhat related. So let's turn to FindCollabs a little bit and say, where did this idea come from? What is it? And is it related to SE Daily at all? Or is it like just a completely different thing?
So FindCollabs is a solution to a set of problems that I have been dealing with since college. And the main problem is, how do you find a collaborator who you can trust to work on a project with using the internet? So the way that this came together is I'm a musician, and in college I was writing a lot of music. I was composing a lot of music on the computer. I use a program called FL Studio. It's kind of like an IDE for music, and my friends are musicians. Like they're like really good musicians, but they don't ship. I tried so many times. I was just like, hey, can you guys just like come over? Like, just my friend who's a guitarist, like, can you come over and just like play some riffs? I've got a great mic set up. Like, I got 4 hours blocked off on Saturday. I want to help you bring out your best work. We're going to write a song together. It's going to be amazing. And they always flake. And just always. I couldn't get them to be reliable. And I didn't understand. I couldn't understand why people did not want to actually ship. And so I have been unable to find collaborators for music. And, I became a Quora power user near the end of my time in college. And Quora is amazing because they managed to gamify the question and answer process and build a reputation system around that. And so the idea of FindCollabs is to create a reputation system around people creating projects and contributing creatively to each other's projects in order to build your reputation. Because like I built a reputation on Quora, and that was kind of the backbone. That was a bootstrap for a lot of the things I did after Quora. Like Quora is just a random, like basically a blogging platform. And, I use that to bootstrap into a lot of other things. So like these reputation platforms are super novel. This is like a super new thing we have on the internet. The idea that you can build a public reputation. Yeah, we've got LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn is kind of this like JSON blob of a reputation, but like with FindCollabs, I want to create something that's highly ordered. It's like you can say, here are the things I've done. Like I did this on Saturday. Like I wrote software here. I fixed your bug. I wrote a song here. I wrote the lyrics here. I fixed this production issue here. Like here's my backlog of stuff I've done. You want to collaborate with me? Like I've got a good reputation. So if you want to collaborate with me, you better bring a good reputation as well. I want to bring together people who are serious about their work, whether it's creative work or work or whatever. And so that's kind of the goal of FindCollabs.
So is collaboration in terms of, if I'm collaborating on music, is that just transferable over to collaborating on software, which is transferable over to collaborating on a quilt? Or I don't know what other things you're going to collaborate on, medical stuff or anything creative. Help me out here, because I'm not very creative. But like, can you just say, well, it's a collaboration platform, but maybe the things that you do to collaborate, are they the same across these different niches?
Right. I mean, as you guys probably know, I'm pretty terrible at focusing on a specific thing. And so like the initial go-to-market with FindCollabs was, look, find collabs for anything. Like find your collaborators for online quilt making. Why not?
Right.
And music and whatever. And like I tried to like make all these different projects and like it kind of like gained some traction, but now I've kind of done, the thing where you make a mistake of starting too broadly and then you really focus and you double down on the thing that works the best. So obviously my best distribution channel is to software engineers. So I have kind of focused FindCollabs into a platform for software engineers to collaborate on mostly open source software. I love GitHub, obviously. GitHub has the LinkedIn problem where, not the JSON blob resume problem, but...
You mean Microsoft?
Yeah.
Well,
No.
sure, whatever.
That's a joke.
No, but like, so
That is pretty funny.
the GitHub problem and the LinkedIn problem are, what do you do when you have too many opportunities? Like, what do you do when there is so much opportunity in your social network that you can't capture it all? And like with GitHub, it's like an added problem because like, what do you do when your social network is also an infrastructure tool? Like you just can't do everything that GitHub could do. Like GitHub could obviously encapsulate the functionality that FindCollabs has right now. And you can use GitHub to find collabs. Like you can find collaborators. There's so much latent information on GitHub. Like that's great. But, I don't see a whole lot of people like sort of finding collabs on GitHub. Like I do see people like joining, the Kubernetes project or whatever, but it's like FindCollabs is really at this point focused on open source software projects. Hence my my cloying to come on changelog and promote my own platform. It's a place where people can find collaborators for their open source projects. It's a matchmaking tool, a dating website for open source.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that I can't tell you where I would go on the internet to find people that I share interests with. In software, sure, it's a little easier. We have a couple of different directions, but even when you go to a project's homepage, it's still difficult to find your way in, right? To find that they're even seeking collaborators. Sure, it's open source. You assume contributions or potential ability to become a maintainer or a core team member is an opportunity just because by the nature of it, but there's no real direct conduit where in the case of something like FindCollabs, you're saying that there's a lot of people out there with shared interests that don't know each other that need a place to essentially gather or look for opportunities because in GitHub it's latent. The data's there, but it's not surfaced. And in FindCollabs, you're surfacing these opportunities to have shared interests and actually work together and potentially even provide communication opportunities. Not just, hey, I like software. Do you like software? Let's make software together. But how do you do it?
It seems like to me that there's a few different aspects of FindCollabs today. And of course, like all projects, it's evolving and changing. And you've even changed, probably since we talked a few months back, the aim, because I know it was more music focused or more broad, like you said, FindCollabs for anything you're focusing in on software. Does it seem like the reputation system itself is like the nut? That's the linchpin of FindCollabs idea, and you're building tooling around that. But if you can provide this service of this reliable reputation system for people to work together, then that's a hugely valuable thing.
That's the long-term vision. I mean, you kind of need a lot. I mean, bootstrapping a reputation system is like super hard. Airbnb, right? Airbnb in the limit is a reputation system, but obviously like there's some bootstrapping that needs to be done because it starts with like no reputations. So if you try to say, hey, we're a reputation-based home sharing platform on day one, like, okay, show me your reputation. I was like, well, we got some photos.
Right.
No one stayed here yet.
No one has stayed here yet.
Right.
Good luck.
And they also have the advantage of that bootstrap process, I think, is much more iterative than with collaborating on a thing, because I can stay at a different Airbnb 7 nights a week, right? Like I could start one week with no reputation, and by the end of the month, I could have 30 reviews because each night is a new opportunity for a review. But on collaborating on software, like these are long-term projects sometimes, right? You don't know right away if somebody is reliable or they're going to show up until, maybe they showed up and they were awesome for 3 weeks. And then like week 4, they started to flake on you. And so it's going to take a lot longer to build those reputations because you just have longer iterations.
Yeah. It's also difficult, I would say, to quantify a reputation. Like, what are the criteria for which people are, gain this reputation? Is it simply by showing up? Is it by contributing awesome things? Is it, through prose? Is it, in what way can you quantify a reputation, And is it a star system? Is it written form? Is it criticism based? Like, if I collaborate with Jared and Jared flaked on me on week 4, as his example showed, do I showcase Jared's, reputation with me by saying he failed me and then therefore he's a failure and he will fail you as well?
My incompetence on display.
Right. Like, how do you display reputation? What are some, well, I guess maybe less, how does FindCollabs do it? More, what are your thoughts on displaying
you've been thinking about
reputation?
this.
Yeah.
So I think it will work similarly to how the reputation systems we already see in place are playing out. So my favorite reputation-based marketplace is Fiverr. Do you guys use Fiverr or Upwork?
Heard of it? Haven't
Familiar
used it
with
yet.
Fiverr?
Okay. I mean, I would heavily encourage you guys to check it out and just see what you can do with it. It's a great place to spend money. It's like, I know some people like get their jollies from like impulse shopping at a mall or something. I get my jollies from impulse shopping on Fiverr. Like, you can find
gosh,
like
that's awesome.
game
What kind of stuff you
designers,
Beats?
musicians, so I wrote an album with musicians from Fiverr. So like I found a bunch of singers on Fiverr, some guitarists, like some violin. I've gotten design work, that's pretty straightforward. Some software work, it kind of varies like what it's good for, but like it's definitely the future, like in some ways that people are kind of underestimating. But anyway, like, when you hire a singer on Fiverr, it's a very subjective, process, like even more subjective than like Airbnb in some ways. Like, my typical workflow for writing that album was, I would have a song written. I would have the whole track written. I would sing the lyrics, and then I would send them like, basically, here's my take with my horrible like atonal voice. Here's the lyrics written down. Sing this, give it back to me. And then they would sing it. They'd give it back to me. We'd do a revision. In most cases, like, hey, you did a few things wrong. Can you like sing this like a pitch higher or something? And you iterate on it. And then eventually, like, they give you a finished product that's satisfactory, and you give them a 5-star rating. And you also give them, so like Fiverr has a star rating plus a review system. So, that gives you some highly ordered like dimensionality and some like less ordered dimensionality in the review system. And I think the reviews are optional. There's like additional like little reviews you can add. Like, you can really give a lot of feedback or a little bit of feedback. So there's a wide range of amount of feedback you can give, but the net result is that, they develop this reputation system that's like, pretty amazing for designers and creators and, artists and game animators, like game animators making a living on Fiverr. It's like quite amazing. Or like, Twitch, like I'm the person you go to when you need to set up like your Twitch channel. Like, I'll help you with all the marketing and stuff for setting up your Twitch channel. Like that kind of random long tail work that you guys know as podcasters, like I know as a podcaster, there's a lot of random long tail work that I need help with. Mm-hmm. And if I can leverage somebody on Fiverr, like I will absolutely pay them $30 to solve a problem that would take me 5 hours. And sorry, I'm going on a tangent here, but Fiverr is amazing. And so
You like Fiverr a lot. Clearly.
I love it. Fiverr is like, oh gosh. It is the AWS for people, basically.
Okay.
It really is. So Fiverr is very under the radar.
This episode is brought to you by KubeCon, Cloud Native Con, and you are invited to attend this flagship conference from the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. It's happening March 30th through April 2nd next year, 2020 in Amsterdam. This conference gathers the adopters and technologists from leading open source and cloud native communities. Use the code KCEU changelog to get 10% off your registration. Again, KCEU changelog. That's KC for KubeCon, EU for Europe, and changelog for changelog. Or check the show notes for our special link to learn more and register, and a link to the Convince Your Boss letter. Again, check the show notes for our special link to learn more and register. Can I ask you a question real quick then on Fiverr that relates probably back to FindCollabs? Have you considered this idea of portable reputation? So if it seems like you've been able to collaborate very well on Fiverr, similar to the way you might want to on FindCollabs, and one of the ways you've done that is by accessibility to talent and being able to, I guess, potentially see they've done a good job elsewhere, they're reputable. Is there an idea where maybe there's a world where the reputation system is an API, for lack of better terms, and you can share this gig economy reputation system? FindCollabs can use it, Fiverr can use it, or is it simply just a proprietary world where you have to build your own each time?
I mean, I would not be opposed to what you are describing developing.
Because would it be nice to start FindCollabs leveraging that
Of course.
reputation model and that marketplace? And
Absolutely.
or does FindCollabs simply become a feature of what Fiverr could build?
No, so you could imagine, so we have a sign up with GitHub, right? You could definitely imagine a sign up with GitHub where you sign up with GitHub into FindCollabs, and then FindCollabs crawls your repositories and figures out how many commits you've made. And then it's like, whoa, this person is really great at contributing to software projects. They just do a great job, and they're always, you look at their status page, it's always green. It's straight up green, green, green. And then we could give them a high reputation, just kind of inferred from their past behavior. That could totally work. I think that would be great. I think if you take it too far, it becomes the Chinese credit system.
It's a data point, but it's not. Yeah, I can't.
An indicator, not truth. A source of potential truth.
Yeah, and you don't want this to be centralized into one kind of provider, but having it I like the idea of federated rating identity.
Well, I think in that kind of world, you can't really be Jeff M125. You got to be, you got to be you all the way, right?
Totally.
You can't be some inauthentic identity. You got to be.
I mean, you could do pseudonyms. There's some great pseudonyms on
Sure,
Twitter.
Sure.
I will give a high rating to certain pseudonym accounts.
What I mean, though, does this system require? So I think of it we use Breakmaster Cylinder for a lot of our music production. In fact, everything we do is Breakmaster Cylinder music, and so we know that Breakmaster Cylinder is.
What is that? That's a platform for finding
Yeah, it's a person or persons. We're not really sure. They have this level of anonymity. So Breakmaster Cylinder is
Mysterious.
a person. Yeah, it's I don't know how to describe Breakmaster
It's a musician.
Cylinder. They're a person.
They're a
Musician, composer. But the point is that I guess what I was trying to drive at was should people on this kind of system, this reputation system, it would seem you'd want to attach that to an identity. But I can see how a Breakmaster Cylinder wouldn't want to be their actual name. So you have to have sort of aliases, or as you said, pseudonyms.
Yeah, I mean, you Banksy. I think Banksy makes a good living. I don't know how he makes a living, or it, or them.
They.
Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
That's like Breakmaster Cylinder.
Banksy makes a living by burning its own work.
Right.
Shredding it.
Shredding it, that's right. It wasn't burned, it was shredded.
Shredding it, yeah. Well, I think once you're at that's a whole different level, though.
Fiverr has one of these systems. Uber has one of these systems. Amazon has one of these systems, right? Goes on and on. And I'm curious if what's happened on Fiverr and what could potentially be a pitfall for FindCollabs is happening, what's happened on Uber, where it's anything less than a 5-star rating is death to these drivers in certain cases, right? They will do anything because there's this presumption of if it's not perfect. A 4-star is really bad. And it's I don't know where that ethos came from, but it exists, and now it's everyone's a slave to it. Is there anything like that on Fiverr? Or I could see where maybe I'm a good collaborator, but I had a bad day, or we just didn't get along and the person reviewed me poorly, and now I got this bad reputation, and maybe it was a personal thing, because collaboration is multifaceted. It's not just nuts and bolts. Was it delivered on time? Was it high quality, etc.? Have you thought about that possibility, and like how do we guard against those kind of issues?
Well, on Uber, there's a lot of drivers, and so we should have extremely high standards. And plus, it's like people can die. If you don't die and the ride is like safe and clean, and the driver seems like he or she has got enough sleep, like it's pretty easy. Just like, yeah, here's a 5-star rating. Like all good. If they do something wrong, that's a pretty bad sign. Like, it's a pretty well-ordered transaction. Obviously, there's subtlety, and that's why there's 5 stars, and you can do tipping and ratings, and you can write into customer service and tell them or something. There's like all kinds of embossed reputation reviews that you can add. Fiverr, there's a much. I mean, first of all, this is like a very new domain, so like, and also if this was an issue for FindCollabs, it'd be a very good problem to have. I would be very happy to work through this problem. It's kind of actually the same thing the more that I think about it. Like, if you work with a designer and you see their portfolio when you hire them, you see the best that their portfolio has to offer. If you're not a jerk, you're gonna cut them some slack. You're gonna admit this is creative work. Like, if they showed up, they were reliable, you're gonna give them 5 stars. And part of the reason for that is because like most people, they flake. And like it's almost like if somebody doesn't flake on you,
that's true.
You are just so grateful, because the modus operandi of most people is just, I don't want to deal with that commitment. I'm just going to ghost. It's like, okay, cool.
That's
like,
so true.
Good luck succeeding.
I mean, that's a life hack for those listening. If you want to completely stand out from a crowd and just like set yourself apart in the world, is when you say you're going to do something, do it. Like don't be a flake. Like it's amazing that the bar is that low for success in many places, but it really, really is. Like if we can find somebody who's reliable and does what they say they're going to do, I know I personally will bring them business for the rest of my life, because if I can find that person, I love them because they're hard to find. So that's a very good point, and it's so true.
Well, let me ask you guys both a question then. When you seek a collaborator, whether it's on FindCollabs or just generally, one of the things you often ask people, especially if you have a reference, is, would you work with them again? And often, for me at least, my willingness to work with that person that's being referred to me, if they answer yes, is like, sure, I'll work with them if you would work with them again. But if you would say no, then I would probably say no as well. Do you think it's just that simple? That if the review system is, for lack of better terms, binary in the fact that like the people reviewing them would just say, would you work with them again, yes or no? And if the answer is yes, then higher credibility. If the answer is no, then it's a decline in credibility.
You need to have the option to not fill out a review. So, there are many contexts.
Just a yes or no then.
If it's just yes or no, like, would you work with this person again? I'm answering yes, or I'm not answering at all in most cases. Like,
okay.
Because there's just risk. Like, you just don't want to give somebody a bad rating because they could be a sociopath.
Okay.
It's sticky.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to drive at is less the semantics around it or the mechanics you could build around it, and more like, for me, it's like if I'm going to choose to work with somebody, it's because somebody said, yeah, I'd work with them again. And so my inclination is to work with them as well, because somebody I know and trust, or at least somebody I can perceive to know and trust, whether it's an internet friend or a literal neighbor friend or something like that, then my trust is extended by their willingness to work with them again.
Well, for
and
sure.
What you're saying is that you're saying you wouldn't say no because of a social fear of some sort.
So I'm saying like if you want the honest truth about somebody, like especially if they're like a crucial hire, you have to back channel references. There's this really famous book about, well, not famous, but like pretty popular book. Like if you're trying to hire in Silicon Valley in particular, or really anywhere, there's a really good book on hiring called, I think it's called The Who, or like the Who Test or something. And like multiple very successful entrepreneurs have referred to this book to me as like, this is the way that you hire. And it basically boils down to references. Just back channel as many references as you can. Everybody that is worth working with has a gigantic list of good references. It's that simple. And the people who only have no references or dubious references or references from people who seem sketchy, like, just don't work with them unless they're like an intern, or they're really young, or they seem like they've recently gone through some kind of transformation in their life and you want to take a gamble on them. But like, you probably don't want to put that person as like your head of sales in a 400-person organization.
But what we're talking about is collabs, though. So it seems like small teams.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, we're not talking about head of finance at a large corporation on FindCollabs. I'm not going there to get a hire. I'm going there to find people that have like-minded interests. And if I'm somebody who's running the project or somebody who's running the collab, then I want to allow people in or disallow people in based on what? I guess reputation? Is that it?
I mean, it's not really a disallowance or an allowance. I mean, the way that it works today is you create a project and anybody can join the project. And you can kick people out. Like, if you're the admin, you're the project manager, you can kick anybody out. But like, the default is anybody's allowed to join. Like, we could add permissions and whatever, and like, hopefully, we will at some point once we have demand for that kind of thing. But like, right now, it's like, you show up, you say, hey, can I like jump into your music project, or can I jump into your like open source compiler thing for Rust? Like, yes, please, I'm working on this by myself. Please help me.
Right. So what you need is the marketplace, as you mentioned before, prior to concerning yourself with reputation. So we're actually talking about reputation early and putting a lot of weight on it. It seems like you're more of a matchmaker on interests.
Yes.
And in the long term, as you mentioned, reputation is going to matter.
Yes.
But not today, right? Because like today, it's almost like, hey, if you're here, and you're, we're going to try you out no matter what because the demand is low.
Well, so this is another reason why I wanted to come on and, in extreme self-interest, wanted you guys to interview me, is because it's hard for people to understand this. Like, it's a carrot on a stick. And the carrot is the long-term vision for getting a reputation, for building a reputation that will help you. That's a lot of like buy-in to agree to.
Yeah.
And frankly speaking, FindCollabs is in the early days, and it's like hard to get people to understand this. I'm really doing my best. I'm trying to paint a picture of a world where people can reliably find collaborators for their projects, and there will be a norm of not flaking. Or if you're going to not do something, like just say, hey, I can't help out right now, I'm peacing out, like, sorry, maybe next time. And that just doesn't exist today.
So the carrot is for early adopters, because that's what you're trying to get, is the bootstrapped early community. Everything gets easier. It's one of those perpetual problems for entrepreneurs. Like, everything gets better as the network effect takes on. But until there's a network effect, it sounds like the carrot that you're offering to the early adopters who are out there listening, potentially are interested, is it's easy to build your reputation right now.
Correct.
Because it's low-hanging fruit, or there's just not much competition, so to speak, in the collaboration marketplace on FindCollabs, and so you can get in early, build that great reputation, and if and when FindCollabs gets network effects, then you're going to have a strong reputation built in.
Correct. And this happened with Quora. It happens with all the new platforms. Like, the people who are early adopters and then the platform takes off, they have this huge like head start.
Yeah.
Quora did this thing to accelerate their growth called the Top Writers Program, where basically people who wrote a lot on the platform and wrote good answers got a big red, top writer thing. And
Something special.
Something special. And they got their answers promoted, and, they got a nice fleece in the mail. They got invited to these amazing events where all the top writers were. They created this form of scarcity to reward the people who were really putting in the work in developing their platform. Like, and that level of honesty between the platform owner and the platform creator, basically the platform owner saying, look, you guys are building this for us. Like, we understand that. We're going to reward you. That adds fuel to the fire. And like, I would like to do that at some point. We kind of did that in the early days with the FindCollabs hackathons, where basically I just earned money by, rewarding people for their projects on FindCollabs. It was a little too early to do that. I would like to do other things like that. But yes, I mean, you get it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, even based on the ratings mentioned on the homepage, you got communication, projects, video, and then trust. And inside of trust, you say, as a prescription, it seems, reward a great collaborator with 5 stars. If someone is flaky and unresponsive, give them 1 star.
Correct.
It seems like to me, and now we're just riffing here, is that 5 stars, these kind of rating systems are very difficult because the star ratings are so subjective. And that's why I was kind of driving at with the Uber scenario where it's like, it's 5 stars or bust. I've noticed that certain recommendation engines...
Well, even in his copy, it says that basically.
Right.
It's 5 stars or bust.
Some recommendation engines, such as Netflix, eventually moved on to like, did you like this show or not? And it's like, yes, I did.
Yeah.
And it's kind of going back to, Adam, what you're talking about with like, would you work with this person again? Or would you recommend this collab? Like maybe just thumbs up, thumbs down is better because now I don't have to decipher what is 3.5 stars. Or I know I go on Amazon sometimes and I'll look at 2 products and they both have like thousands of reviews and one's at like 4.5 and the other one's at 4. And I'm like, what's the actual quantifiable difference there? I don't know. I'll go with the 4.5, you know? And it's like, well,
it's probably nothing.
It's probably nothing. And then of course they got the big,
then it's just
they got the big problems of, paid reviews and all that kind of crap.
You can buy those on Fiverr, by the way.
Zing. Well, I like that you're on my riff then. So are you agreeing with me, Jared? That's sort of a system that it keeps it simple and it's enough to understand if you do or don't want to work with somebody.
But then I also understand the granularity argument because, again, going back to now Uber, and I know we're just camping out on recommendation systems or on reputation systems, but maybe that's just the point here, is that, there are different aspects to that ride. And like, would you ride with this person again? Maybe it doesn't allow you to express your concerns, right? Or maybe it was like, well...
It does for me. Because there was somebody I came home from in Denver on the way to the airport. I would never get in that person's car
Sure,
again.
sometimes it's fine. But what if it's like a person that you totally ride with again, but they still they talked a little bit too much and you just want to like dock them for like, well, don't talk to me quite so much, but it's not like it's dangerous.
So maybe first class citizen.
That's don't leave a rating.
See?
Okay.
Here's what's interesting is we all create these systems in our mind. Like I didn't even think about don't create a rating. I'm like, well, they're asking me to review. My don't create a rating is when don't care. I'm like, I don't want to.
Yeah. Well, I think, okay, so I would put weight on the, would you work again with them, yes or no, first. And then second, beyond that, if I want to get into the granularity of the person, written reviews of some sort, whether it's eBay style, would buy again, plus, whatever, or just some sort of narrative from the person. And then I think back to the concern you had, Jeff, was whether or not this person is a sociopath. And if they're going to hunt you down.
Is that a checkbox?
And get you.
A new Uber, it's anonymized. Like I don't think the drivers know who is rating them what. Although if they drive and drop you off and then immediately get kicked off of the Uber platform, they're going to be able to figure out whose rating resulted them in getting kicked off the platform.
They could assume.
And they might drive right back to where they dropped you off.
Dangerous.
Well, that's why you have delayed jobs. So you can just delay that job until the next day.
Well, we hope so.
How often do you think about internal tooling? I'm talking about the back office apps, the tool the customer service team uses to access your databases, the S3 uploader you built last year for the marketing team, that quick Firebase admin panel that lets you monitor key KPIs, and maybe even the tool that your data science team had together so they can provide custom ad spend insights. Literally every line of business relies upon internal tooling, but if I'm being honest, I don't know many engineers out there who enjoy building internal tools, let alone getting them excited about maintaining or even supporting them. And this is where Retool comes in. Companies like DoorDash, Brex, Plaid, and even Amazon, they use Retool to build internal tooling super fast. The idea is that almost all internal tools look the same. They're made of tables, drop-downs, buttons, text inputs, and Retool gives you a point, click, drag and drop interface that makes it super simple to build these types of interfaces in hours, not days. Retool connects to any database or API, for example, to pull data from Postgres. Just write a SQL query and drag and drop a table onto the canvas. And if you want to search across those fields, add a search input bar and update your query, save it, share it. It's too easy. Retool is built by engineers, explicitly for engineers. And for those concerned about data security, Retool can even be set up on-premise in about 15 minutes using Docker, Kubernetes, or Heroku. Learn more and try it free at retool.com/changelog. Again, retool.com/changelog. And by cross-browser testing of SmartBear, the innovator behind the tools that make it easier for you to create better software faster. If you're building a website and don't know how it's going to render across different browsers or even mobile devices, you'll want to give this tool a shot. It's the only all-in-one testing platform that lets you run automated, visual, and manual UI tests across thousands of real desktop and mobile browsers. Make sure every experience is perfect for everyone who uses your site, and it's easy and completely free to try. Check it out at crossbrowsertesting.com/changelog. Again, crossbrowsertesting.com/changelog.
That does speak to another difference with collaboration versus these things. Is like, we're talking a lot about products and services. You know, Amazon's products, Fiverr is services, Uber is a service, and it's a unidirectional review. Of course, there are opportunity for, like, I think an Uber driver can also mark a rider as like a problem or whatever.
Yeah, they can
review you as well. But collaboration is inherently collaborative, right? It's in the word. Like, it's bidirectional. And there's not just like, this person's services were insufficient for me, so I'm not giving them my $30, or I don't think it was worth $30. This is like two people, or maybe more, 5 people, teaming up, like melding together to create something that they couldn't create on their own. And that's a much more, I don't know, dynamic and kind of like interwoven relationship. Harder to just review that. Don't you think, Jeff?
Well, I mean, you leave a star rating, and then you also can like type something. Like, you can leave like 3 stars and say like, this person's handwriting was great, but the words they were writing were incoherent. You know, like,
right, but they're gonna have something to say about you as well, and maybe that.
Oh, it's bidirectional.
Yeah,
it's bidirectional.
Yeah.
So like the project. So there's like the project owner, and then there's the roles. Like, that's how it works. So there's basically 2 types of roles. There's an owner role, and there's then there's like roles that the owner creates. So you have like the project owner, who's basically like the admin, and then you have people who can join the role. So like,
yeah.
So like, if I create a project, I can be like the project manager, and then I can create like 4 developer roles. I create like front end, back end, like 2 QA roles. And whenever somebody finishes their work and they decide like, I'm going to leave the project now, they click finish project. And it's a bidirectional review. I can leave a review about you. You can leave a review about me. We can both choose to not leave reviews. One of us can leave a review. It's bidirectional. And the review is a star rating plus a written review.
Okay.
Or just a star rating.
I mean, I know that reputation matters, but if we're speaking specifically to FindCollabs, as you said before, Jeff, I don't think it quite matters just yet. I think the nut you need to crack is the fact that there are people out there with similar interests and giving them a place to connect. And right now, that's rando through Twitter, buddy, friend, whatever, told me, somebody recommended. It's the typical word of mouth, you know, social network way that it happens. There's no place to go and say, my name's Jeff, I dig music, I'm looking for collaborators, or I'm looking to collaborate with other musicians on XYZ genre. Where do I go find these kinds of people and put my 2 cents in and put my talents into the pool? And there's not really, that I'm aware of at least, a place to do that. That seems to be the place where you focus your attention rather than reputation, which sure, it does matter, but you need the marketplace first before the reputation comes into play.
My thesis is that there is a problem with the norms. So, you know, on Fiverr, you know, you're going to get paid or you're not going to get paid for your work. So there's an implicit norm of actually your reward being highly correlated with how good of a job you do. But like in software, like, or in writing music with other people, like, people just flake all the time. And the people who don't flake become Coldplay. It's like that simple. And the reason we don't have more Coldplay...
Is it that simple?
I mean, well, you might not like Coldplay. So, like, but like I would say the same for Depeche Mode.
Depeche Mode.
Yeah. I mean, how do you succeed if you're, like, a healthy person who has digital skills and, like, some small notion of what creativity might embody? You just work. Like, it's that simple. It's not very complicated. And yet we just have norms that, like, make it much more complicated. Like, no, I can't. I gotta wait for my muse. Like, Netflix has a new show that I gotta go watch, and then like
I gotta binge this thing.
Yeah,
well, those are people that don't belong, in my opinion. Then I mean,
don't belong
those
to
are the
what?
excuse makers
in the collaboration.
Right, in the collaboration. I don't think that they would, those aren't the people I think are seeking the opportunities. I would imagine that at least because, okay, if I'm a musician and you're a musician and I dig the kind of music you're doing and I go to a marketplace where I want to find people, I want to put my hat into the bucket, so to speak, I'm going to show up and I'm going to want to know what the reward is. I'm going to say, well, is this a free opportunity? Is this a social credit opportunity? Is this a get paid opportunity? And if so, let me put my application in. Let me put my hat in. Let me raise my flag. Whatever that, digital artifact is inside of FindCollabs, I want to tell whomever's running that collab that I want to get involved. Right? That doesn't really exist now. Later on, reputation will matter.
Yeah.
But reputation is like wisdom. It will come through experience. Right? You need to have the marketplace, and the reputation system will play itself out based on just showing up, just doing it. If they flake, like you say most people do, they're going to be clear that they're flakes.
He's already coded the reputation system, so like it's there. Maybe
it's all there.
Yeah, I mean, like it could take different forms and it could change over time, but that's there. What needs to be there is that matchmaking.
Right, exactly.
Well, really, I mean, it comes down to I think volume and to enough people coming in the door who are really like willing and wanting to do this work. I mean, right now we've got like kind of a few projects on there where the people are really cranking on the projects and they're believers. Like they believe in what this thing is built to do and they're willing to like bear with the cold start. I will shower those people with my gratitude in all kinds of ways. I think that will continue. I will continue being extremely grateful for the early adopters, and eventually it will build momentum because I think that this is something that really we need to have just better norms around.
So we talked, maybe it was even before we hit record, but we were talking about bootstrapping versus funding. Earlier on, I know we had hit record, you talked about how you did a thing, which was basically burning money, and how this is, like SE Daily is funding FindCollabs in terms of development capital. And I'm curious if you've considered saying, well, I'm in the Valley. I know I'm connected here and I have a money problem. Because you could go the Quora route, you could do the concierge, whatever you call it, like take your early adopters and blow it out for them, make it really worth it for them. If you had cash, like lots of it, have you considered
money to burn,
going out and trying to raise some money, or are you trying to keep this all in the house?
Indie hack.
I mean, maybe, like I wouldn't mind having some more money, but like speaking of norms, I don't really like the norm of like you take money and then you're subservient to the people that you take money from. Like if you take money for a mortgage, you don't have to like send the bank monthly updates about how your house is going. Like it's just it's like a really stupid set of norms, I think, that exist around a lot of the VC stuff. It's like mostly to stroke the egos of the venture capitalists, and I just think it's hilarious and kind of preposterous, and and I don't need it. Like, so like why sign up for that? Like, and what does money get you? Like, it lets you run faster. Does that even matter? Like, this problem has existed since I was in college. It could have been solved back then. Like, nobody's doing it.
Well, you talked about how Quora spent money on the early adopters in order to make it worthwhile for them. The hard part with a social network, which FindCollabs essentially is that making value for the initial adopters. And so you could use money to do that. Like you could literally give them money or something. I mean, you could be more creative. So that's the answer to what would it get you. That's what it would get you.
So I tried that. I tried that already.
Okay.
So I tried that already, and I might try it again.
At scale, though, I think is kind of where Jared's at.
Blow it out.
Is not... Yeah, like blow it out. But
like if it worked a little bit, you can get a lot more.
The events you'd mentioned, the extra flair on site, swag,
I'm not
parties,
saying that you
whatever.
have to take VC funding for that. I'm just saying, like, have you thought about that process, and maybe that's a route towards success?
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, I would much rather first try like going on changelog though.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to marketing. So like the first business I built or I tried to build like after Software Engineering Daily was this business called Ad4Prize. And like Ad4Prize was basically like where another network effects business where I tried to solve the cold start problem with paid acquisition. And I burned all of my money. So it's like paid acquisition is really, really, I mean, it's fun in the sense that like you see results, but you don't really know like how sustainable those results are if you subtracted the capital. It's just hilarious and very dangerous. And early on, like, my leaning was to do the same thing with FindCollabs. So I did these, FindCollabs hackathons. I did a couple, and I threw some cash at the problem, and you just get skewed results. Like, and that's not like, I'm not sure I'm looking for the person who is motivated, purely by money. Cause like in college, if I had FindCollabs, I would have been all in on this thing. I would have leaned into this thing so hard, because like that's what I did with Quora. I was like, I am so desperate to find people who think like Silicon Valley people, because I was University of Texas, which is, kind of in Austin, which is sort of like the home of lackadaisical creativity. Burn. I mean, that's kind of changing as the tech companies are sort of like, infusing it with a little more, realism about what it takes to succeed in technology at the greatest heights. But like, I certainly did not find that in college, and I was craving it, and I found it on Quora. And so like, if the early FindCollabs community is these people who are just like, look, we're just going to build stuff. Like, that's what motivates us, is building stuff and creativity, and like, money is a means to an end for building stuff. So yeah, I don't know. So money eventually, like, absolutely, I would love to have FindCollabs paid hackathons and things like that.
So you're going the organic route for now. Admirable. It's also the route that I would tend to go as well, for the same reasons as you stated about VC requirements. Are you building FindCollabs on FindCollabs? Like, I know it's open source. Are you quote unquote dog fooding, or as our friends at GitLab like to call it, champagning, where they drink their own champagne?
Yeah. So I have a FindCollabs, like a help collab. Like, it's like a collab. It's called FindCollabs Help and Support. So you can like file bugs and stuff in there.
But open source project, though, you think you could use it to find some collabs for your project? Or who's building it with you?
FindCollabs. So FindCollabs, there's a developer that I work with, Sterling Salzberg. Shout out to Sterling. Big ups to Sterling. He is an incredible developer and designer. Please do not try to hire him away from FindCollabs, but he is amazing.
No poaching.
So a lot of the design intuitions and the UI UX stuff, and of course the engineering, it's like a pretty well-built React app at this point, is Sterling's magic.
On the subject of acquisition, though, are you, either of you, familiar with the way Airbnb growth hacked early on?
The photos thing?
Properties, opportunities, was they actually scraped Craigslist. They didn't have an API, and that's how they bootstrapped early on to have a marketplace. Was people with listings on Craigslist.
Yes.
Craigslist did not have an API, but Airbnb used that to their advantage. And the reason why I bring that up is because it seems like, based on your passion for Fiverr, you have the inverse of Fiverr with FindCollabs, in the fact that Fiverr has a marketplace of talent, and collaborators go there to find talent, rather than the opposite, which is a marketplace of collaborators who desire talent to say, here's a place you come to find things within your interests. And the reward system is varied, whether it's a open source, contribution free, welcome to the community thing, or a paid opportunity. It seems you have the inverse. Have you considered using Craigslist the way that Airbnb did and use Fiverr as your opportunity pool? Like, reach out to have opportunities,
right,
and build a marketplace of collaborations, and allow Fiverr to just en masse come to FindCollabs and just join up and collaborate, do the thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of little things we could do to solve the cold start problem. There's a lot of things that are operationally intensive to do, and I'm trying to first attempt the ones that are less operationally intensive, because I have a team of basically 2 people. So I would love to do things like that. I would love to scrape. I mean, I would love to scrape Fiverr. I don't want to make an enemy out of Fiverr.
Well, even personally reaching out to some of them. Let's say you've got open source opportunities. Well, then tap the talent pool within Fiverr. I don't even know if this is even legal. I don't even know if I'm suggesting you to break the law.
Yeah,
I don't know.
We are
really.
not lawyers.
What I'm trying to say is just, have you considered how you can use other networks like this?
Oh, sure.
well-aware people to say, hey, there's opportunities here. And sure, as you said before coming on the show, talking to a large software developer community like yours is an opportunity to share this idea with like-minded people. I'm just wondering if you consider that.
Changelog is that network, right? Like, I mean, you guys are the open source. I mean, you're the open source media company, basically. So, most of these projects are open source. So, like, I'll see how this goes. Part of my shtick is, like, I just don't like to spend all of my time on one thing. So I kind of have like a set of projects that are in a round robin queue, and my processor just kind of like go round robins through these different things and works on them until I'm kind of wanting to go do something else, and then I go do something else, and like I'm this is one of these round robin things. So like going on the changelog and people learning about FindCollabs and then going to do it, that's like more of an async thing than like figuring out some kind of scraping mechanism or some kind of manual import mechanism for solving the chicken and egg problem.
Well, let's key in quite tight then. You're speaking directly to our audience right now. Tell them what you want. How can they play a part in your success? What do you offer them? What can they do? What do you need?
So my guess is that a large proportion of the audience will find me extremely abrasive and probably will not at all be interested in the kind of creativity that I'm offering them.
I doubt that.
Like high commitment creativity that you're not getting paid for on this guy's platform. Like,
interesting pitch.
I love it.
I'm really selling it.
Yeah,
right?
you really are.
But I mean, if it resonates with you, then like, come on, FindCollabs. Like I'm on there every day. Like I just made a song with this guy TD Bryant. That's he's working with us as a community manager, Timothy, and he's also a rapper. So I had a beat, and I gave him a beat, and he rapped over it, and we found collabs. And if you're looking for people who are ready to ship, and you're ready to ship, and you're sick of waiting, you're sick of working on projects by yourself, you're bored with the state of your work, you're looking for like the kind of creativity that the internet enables at a collaborative level rather than an individual level. FindCollabs, come on, FindCollabs.
Love it.
You can make a new project. You can find existing projects. We've put a ton of engineering work into our search engine that is just Algolia, basically. So it's actually nothing, but you can search like kind of effectively and find other projects. And we got video chat.
And it's open source too, right?
No, it is not.
It's not open source.
No, it's super.
I thought it was open source.
No. It's the hypocritical model.
Gotcha. The hypocritical model. Well, either way, I like the idea, and geez, dude, like we love you, man. We think you're awesome, and we'd love to find ways to support you. I sure hope the audience isn't by you like you had said they might be, but I think they'll love you just as well.
I hope so.
And that's awesome, man.
I hope so. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for coming on, Jeff. We appreciate it. All right, thank you for tuning into this episode of the Changelog. Hey, guess what? We have discussions on every single episode now, so head to changelog.com to discuss this episode. And if you want to help us grow this show, reach more listeners, and influence more developers, do us a favor and give us a rating or review in iTunes or Apple Podcasts. If you use Overcast, give us a star. If you tweet a link. If you make lists of your favorite podcasts, include us in it. Also, thanks to Fastly, our bandwidth partner, Rollbar, our monitoring service, and Linode, our cloud server of choice. This episode is hosted by myself, Adam Stukowiak, and Jared Santo, and our music is done by Breakmaster Cylinder. If you want to hear more episodes like this, subscribe to our master feed at changelog.com/master, or go into your podcast app and search for Changelog Master. You'll find it. Thank you for tuning in this week. We'll see you again soon.